Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Cam Gwynn talking at you. Side partner in crime. Is that better? Better for you?
Sure, works perfect.
James A. Paxson. So what's the A stand for?
Alfred.
Alfred.
We've been over this
times. I know what it stands for. I just wanted to make sure everyone else knew what it stood for.
Got it.
Got it? All right, so big news happening in soccer, and Jimmy is nice enough to let us make it the first thing we talk about. Neymar signed a massive deal finally with PSG, came to terms with a $250 million U.S. currency, essentially, to go to PSG. So now the saga is over, and we finally have a landing spot for Neymar. He is going to be the star of PSG. He's going to be the front runner. He's going to be the Messi of PSG, which is what he wanted. He wanted to be the front runner. So he got it.
My big question is, what do you think's the real reason he picked PSG over Barcelona? Because those were the two front-running teams that everyone thought he would go to.
Yes,
Barcelona
those were,
or PSG.
for sure.
But why did he pick PSG over Barcelona?
He wanted to be the front man. Just like
that's
Kyrie.
the only reason you think?
Well, and money has to do with it a little
Right,
bit,
of
obviously.
course.
But no, he wanted to be the front man, just like Kyrie wants to be the front man for the NBA, essentially. And it's still a team that he's going to be able to win championships at. It's a team that will work with him as opposed to how he can work into the Barcelona Messi system. So they're going to make this his team, essentially, which had, in my opinion, a big part to do with it, because if you're a superstar coming into the prime of your career, you don't want to be playing along another superstar who is still in his prime somehow. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I think that had something to do with it. I think his dad also wanted him to be the superstar and in the limelight also, because his dad was really pushing to be with PSG. He was meeting with PSG in France, doing the most, really, to get his son onto this team.
Do you think many people know what PSG stands for?
If we had to
I
guess,
didn't. I knew it was Paris something.
Yeah.
I did not know it was Saint Germain.
Well, according to, and we talk about our buddy Tommy a lot, Tommy and Doug, we were able to go to the PSG Roma game at Comerica.
Okay.
And we now call it Paris Sports Guild.
But that was just a side note before I get into what I want to talk about here. PSG, do you really think people know what that stands for?
I mean, I did, but I'm a soccer nut, so no. I think a lot of people don't realize what it stands for.
Anyway, I want to get to it. His overall deal is $613 million. Okay? Here's something that I think is funny. There are these Major League Baseball teams' payrolls that don't even equal up to $613 million.
I want to make sure we say this first. We're getting this from Kevin Baxter's article.
Thank you. Milwaukee Brewers, Tampa Bay Rays, Arizona Diamondbacks, San Diego Padres, Cincinnati Reds, Oakland Athletics, Chicago White Sox. There are 7 Major League Baseball teams who don't even have a payroll up to $613 million. This 25-year-old man is going to make that. I mean, good Lord, Cameron, that is a lot of money.
You know what one I like right here?
What's that?
The fleet of a dozen Boeing 737 jets. You can get a dozen of those for that price. The man's going to have his own jet. He could have his own airline company.
What would you do with $613 million?
I don't know. That's more money than I could even think of, honestly.
Right. I want to get into this real quick because, of course, it's a huge sports news, and it's huge news for soccer. But before we get into kicking it with Cam going around all of soccer, what does this overall mean for the sport of soccer? Because him getting this deal basically guarantees anyone to go to any single team and who's a star-worthy player and get this kind of attention, as I'll say. They may not get the exact amount of money, but they'll get this amount of attention, close to the amount of money, become the star of whatever country they want to get. Is that fair to say?
Kinda.
In my opinion, it changes the whole game of soccer because there are so many teams that could do this from now on.
Well, I mean, soccer players are already crazily paid.
Well, yes.
For sure. But I don't know if it really
$613 million paid?
I don't know if it really changes the aspect or the landscape of how other teams are going to handle their transfers. Because this is, I mean, Neymar is the biggest star right now. Let's be honest.
Yes.
He is the biggest star that moved anywhere.
Right.
So besides Lukaku, who is right up there, but Neymar is somebody that everybody would want on their team, you know? I don't know if a lot of players are going to go the route he did because most players want to go into the EPL and win. That is what most players want. That's their dream, is to be in England and win in England. That's why Lukaku went there. That's why Pogba's there. They want to win in England. I know Lukaku was already there, but that's just an example. But some other players that we do want to talk about. How about another La Liga player potentially moving in my boy Gareth Bale? That's right. Jose Mourinho says, I will fight for Gareth Bale. My only question is, why? You got Pogba, Lukaku, Martial, and Rashford.
Elite domination.
I know, but those are four amazing players, and where is he going to fit? Where's Bale going to fit? They already got a
if you're asking me, I wouldn't know where to put him.
I know.
But
they have a stacked midfield as it is. So why add him? I understand he's more of an attacking mid, but that's what Pogba is. You really want Pogba and Gareth Bale working together? Those are two men that both want the ball in the attacking third.
Right.
So I'd stick with Pogba in my opinion, but that's just me. I don't know. But another note that I do want to touch on, Wesley Sneijder, that's a pretty big name. He goes to Nice on a free transfer. That's kind of cool. Nice isn't really a great team. Snyder's kind of on his way out of soccer as we speak. He's 33 years old, so who knows? Hey, next stop MLS. Let's go. I hope. That would be sweet. And another team, Arsenal, they are looking to sell before they buy. They're looking to get rid of what they have before they try to buy another piece because, Arsenal, they got a lot of money racked up, to be honest.
They have some pieces that people would want.
Yeah, but they got a lot of money. I don't know. Arsenal isn't going to win the league this year, in my opinion. They're going to sit where they usually are, around 4, 5, 6, 7, around there. So this isn't really huge news that they're selling, but it looks like they might be trying to head into a rebuild, which is very interesting. Arsene Wenger came out and said that if you have too many people for the same positions, it's detrimental. And if you have too little, it's detrimental. They think they have too many pieces in the similar spots, which, yeah, I can see. That makes sense. So selling off those pieces is probably a good idea, but, we've seen it in other sports. Do you think Arsenal's in for a rebuild probably?
Most definitely.
That's what I'm
because
gonna
they lost probably one of the biggest soccer players ever, when you really think about it. They could have gotten Neymar if they really wanted to rebuild. You said they have a lot of money, so I don't see the reason why they wouldn't be rebuilding.
Well, it's two completely different leagues, though, so they don't have to worry about Neymar as much, but they already had people in those positions, and their payroll was already way too high.
Right, but you say they don't have to worry about them as much.
That was way
They still got to worry about them.
Maybe in Champions League, but
Do you get what I'm saying, though?
Yeah, Arsenal's not going to do anything this year regardless.
That's a fair point. They're not going to get there anyway. But my point is that they have a lot to worry about if they're going to be good this year.
Yeah, they're they always sit around the same spot. They're going to do the same thing that they have been doing, sitting in the upper middle of the pack and just playing decent soccer.
Right, but what happens when you get later into the season?
Every game is just as important as the first.
That's very fair.
First to last, every game is important. But yeah. So that's what I got for soccer this week. We kicked it.
I did pretty good.
Yeah, you did okay.
Thanks for that. Anyway, getting to a conversation right now before we get into a big college football discussion. That's going to get rowdy and fun. But, Jimmy's going to get a little nerdy and a little boring here, so just relax for a second, Cam, because I know he's going to be a little bored with this. But I wanted to get into something now with a little slow week in sports on what makes professional and college athletes able to do what they want involving politics and freedom of speech. Because I think at the end of the day, there's a lot of variables that go into it. Do you agree with that?
Yeah.
In some sports, you can't do it. In some sports, you can. In some cities, you're allowed to. For example, I think a man is allowed to say, or woman is allowed to say more of what they want in a major market city, as in New York City, LA, Chicago, rather than Utah, Charlotte, Seattle. That's what I think.
All right. Well, when you brought this to my attention, you put Sherman out there. Richard Sherman was your example to me for this. So you think that him being in Seattle is not good?
Well, no, I didn't say that. I'm saying him being in Seattle, he's allowed to say more of what he wants than in another city. That's what I was trying to say to you earlier.
Okay.
Your argument was he can say basically whatever he wants because of his skill placed on the field, which makes a lot of sense. But at the end of the day, I think if he's in a different football city, they're going to try to tell him to quiet down.
I don't know, though.
When you're under Pete Carroll, you can do what you want if you play well. Everyone on that team is allowed to say what they want. Is that fair?
Sure. I don't know if they really do, but Sherman's always an outspoken player and always has been. And quite honestly, the stuff that he's been speaking out on lately, I don't disagree with. You know, he's a smart guy, obviously.
Absolutely.
And he's got a communication. He was going into communications if he didn't decide to play football.
Right.
He's a very, very well-spoken man. And quite honestly, I think for how he goes about what he says, he's fine. He could play anywhere, in my opinion.
Right, but my argument is let's say Richard Sherman's the perfect example because he says whatever he wants.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think he gets fined very much at what he says. At the end of the
Not
day,
to
he
my
doesn't.
knowledge.
He
Not
does
recently,
not
no.
get fined as much as you would think from a man who says whatever he wants. Does stardom, the city you live in, and the ownership and coaches you have mean something when you're trying to do something outspoken?
In a sense, yeah, but a player trying to do anything outspoken is just a player trying to make a difference, honestly. The whole thing that Richard Sherman's been doing lately is he's trying to make it so that all players get a higher rate for the NFL. All players get a higher rate of guaranteed money and
name a
things
player
like that.
in the NFL who, if they started talking about that, people would just say, just shut up.
I mean, yeah, there's a lot of players. If a lot
That's
of
my point.
non-stars came out and started saying that, sure, some of the stars would be like, stop talking, you're done, whatever. Like, if a
Right.
practice player came out and started saying something like this, well, they're not on the team anymore.
Right.
I understand that, yeah, but this is, in my opinion, the way he's going about it is perfect, in my opinion. I think he's doing it the right way.
Well, let's get off of salary and money real quick. Name a couple very important political issues that could be differed between white, black, Republican, Democrat, age.
Name issues other than those?
No, yes. Like
okay.
what are some issues?
For the NFL, payment?
Payment. What else besides the money? Just in general sports.
There's just a lot of stuff that they can talk about in anything. It could be starving people in their home country, where they're from, things like that.
Is there different cities where you're not going to get that point across in America?
Something like that, though. That's a bad example to try to go off
right,
of,
but okay, I'll go with this, all right? You think of some different places in the country, where would you be very okay and proud of wearing a Black Lives Matter shirt as a player or be wearing it as a practice jersey, and where's some places where you would probably get asked to leave the quarter field if you did that? Do you get what I'm saying?
See, I don't like the whole issue with that though is if that were to happen and you were asked to leave because you were wearing that shirt, everybody's going to see that. So everybody's going to be like, okay, this team's racist, these people are racist, all that stuff. Like certain things like that just I don't think would happen, because of where we are at as a country, to be honest, with how race is obviously a huge issue in our country. If you're wearing a shirt like that and you get kicked out of an area for it, what else is going to happen besides everyone going to that place and rioting, saying you guys are racist, or not even rioting, but picketing that brand maybe,
Yeah, I get that. But my thing is, all right, in the past, last season, the WNBA fined athletes on 4 different teams for wearing Black Lives Matter shirts. They were fined for wearing those shirts.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think if the NBA players started doing that, would they be fined?
Well, no, because the NBA is predominantly a black sport.
But why would the WNBA be fined?
It's more of a mixture than the NBA is.
So you're getting my point.
Right.
Is that in this day and age, a person has to be careful where they say things, and some people, in my opinion, get lucky on where they are and how they can say it.
Mm-hmm.
I use the example of Richard Sherman because he's in a perfect spot. He's in Seattle under Pete Carroll, and that ownership doesn't really care what you have to say at the end of the day. Is that fair to say? And then you put Richard Sherman on the New York Giants.
Mm-hmm.
He's probably not going to say as much.
Well, no, because he's too busy being overshadowed by OBJ saying he should be the
Right.
highest paid player in the league.
So do you understand my point?
Yes.
The more I look at this is how we're in this issue of what certain people can say and what certain people can't say. And look at some of the cities where it would be an issue if people were outspoken. For example, the main issue everyone wants to talk about when it comes to NFL is what Colin Kaepernick did.
Mm-hmm.
But what people have to realize at the end of the day, and this is very true in my mind, what would have happened if it wasn't a preseason game where it started, if he wasn't a backup, if he wasn't in San Francisco? Look at all the variables. What if he was a starting quarterback on the Chicago Bears?
I think it still would have been the same outcome because he's being blackballed by the NFL at this point.
But at the end of the day, all that matters in the NFL is how good of a player you are.
I don't know though. I think that was a too outspoken thing, or not outspoken,
Maybe.
but you know what I mean.
You may have my point. Look at the Dallas Cowboys in the 90s. You had Michael Irving, Emmitt Smith, Deion Sanders, all guys who were in legal trouble throughout their career, but they were still on the team.
Ezekiel Elliott, Des Bryant.
You get my point.
Yeah.
Dallas is a place where players can come, break laws, be criminals, and be free to play football. Ezekiel Elliott, if he was on a different team right now, he'd be kicked off.
Oh, you have to be. He'd be a sexual
not based
offender.
on his players.
Just he's a different type of species of a person. I honestly don't understand what's going through his head. Yes, I understand that you got millions of dollars now. You're a sick running back behind the best offensive line ever. So does that even count at that point? I don't know.
You lose some points, but that's a conversation for a different day. I just wanted to bring it to your attention, maybe have a little conversation about it, that there's different variables in what you're allowed to say and how you're allowed to say and how you are perceived in sports. Because I think LeBron James can, of course, say things differently than a backup player on the Detroit Pistons who isn't nationally known. That's for sure. But can he say things because he's in Cleveland different than another city?
No, it's just LeBron.
Maybe that's it. Maybe it's how good of a player you are. Maybe it's how good you are on the court. Maybe it's how nationally known you are. Because there's a lot of issues people could talk about.
Mm-hmm.
You could talk about gay rights. You could talk about abortion. You could talk about African American rights. You can talk about money. You can talk about payment plans. You can talk about the president. You can talk about government. You can talk about politics behind sports. You can talk about suspensions. Who's allowed to talk about suspension? Who's not allowed to talk about suspension? Because not everyone is allowed to talk about suspension at the end of the day.
Oh, it's just the front office. Okay, so get back to the NFL real quick. It's all run by the front office, obviously.
Correct.
The big heads of the NFL are the ones who run the whole NFL. It's not a team-led thing. It's not a player-run league, kind of like the NBA is, essentially. So something in the NFL happens like what happened with Colin Kaepernick. He did it the wrong way. If you go about it the wrong way, then that's when issues ensue. Richard Sherman is talking. Colin Kaepernick kneeled during the Star-Spangled Banner.
Okay, so what you're saying is talking is completely different than using an action.
It really is, in my opinion, when it's the action that was used that way.
Understood. All right, thank you for doing that little serious topic. Now, we go to college football.
It's been a while since we've been able to say
We go to
anything.
football, and it's going to be fun.
Oh, this is going to be a fun season.
All right, let's get right into it, because I know for a fact this is not going to be a fun 10 minutes.
It might be fun.
Okay, let's look at the top 25. We're going to look at the top 5, and you tell me if you see any problems real quick. In the top 25 preseason poll, we got Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, Florida State, USC. That is your top 5 preseason ranking.
I do have an issue with it.
Go ahead.
Why is USC always ranked really, really high in the preseason?
History.
Is that all?
Yeah.
That's it.
History and easy conference.
History and easy conference. Well, history shows that they're going to be out of the top 10 within, 5 weeks?
Yes, but back 10 years ago, they won 30 games
That's
in a
my
row.
point. It was 10 years ago, though.
Yes, but I'm not saying it's right. I don't think they should be that high.
No,
but
never. They're always, the past 4 or 5 years or something like that, they've been ranked in the top at least 10 for preseason.
Correct.
And they faulted all the way out of rankings.
Sam Darnold is not a bad quarterback. He could really be a decent quarterback for USC this year. Granted, they were 10-3 last year, and they're in the Pac-12. And I understand your point where they're not as good as other teams when you look at them, but at the same time, it's all about comparison in college football.
Mm-hmm.
Is USC better than this team? Is USC better than that team? Do I think USC is better than Michigan, Oklahoma, Wisconsin, LSU? I would go with no if I really had to think about it.
I think Penn State's better than them.
Possibly. I mean, Trace McSorley is an unbelievable quarterback.
Dude, this is going to be a better year for quarterbacks than last year was, for sure.
Yeah. Good quarterback year.
This is going to be a good quarterback year compared to last year. There was a lot of talent going through the quarterback system. And did you hear, I actually didn't think I was going to bring this up, but I wanted to bring this up real quick. The number 1 recruited quarterback from California, I don't remember his name. I don't remember for sure what his name is, so I'm not going to try on it. But he decided to go over to Princeton.
Really?
He had offers from USC, UCLA, I believe Oregon gave him an offer, and he decided to go to Princeton. So we've talked about how football is changing and how we saw in this last season ratings were down, right?
Mm-hmm.
We saw it declining a little bit. Do you think more players, and I think this is the smart way to go, honestly. Oh, you found it. Okay,
yes. Good. Brevin White is pledged to play football at Princeton starting in 2018 next season.
Yes. So do you think, and I'll ask you this question, we'll get back to the top 25. Do you think that more players are going to start picking a better school to go to and get a degree and then go into the NFL?
Absolutely.
I think that's got to be the way to go.
For sure. Because at the end of the day, people pick players based on statistics and how they play.
Yes.
I think this kid could go win 2 games a year at Princeton for 4 years, and he could get drafted in the first round as a quarterback if he has the stats.
Yes, of course.
Leadership ability does not matter in football anymore. So this kid plays 6-7 years in the NFL, makes millions of dollars, quits, and then has a job because he went to Princeton.
And used his degree.
He used his degree.
I think more players should start doing that and are going to start doing that because, honestly, a good shelf life in the NFL for a player to be able to get out of the NFL and have a good life after, in my opinion, is probably like 5 years. 5-6 years, and then you got to be done. Your body just can't handle much after that.
A perfect example of this is look at Lamar Jackson in Louisville.
Oh, yeah.
He won the Heisman.
Yeah, for sure.
He had unbelievable amounts of yards and touchdowns. Meanwhile, his team was 9-4, and they're ranked 16th. A Heisman Trophy winning quarterback comes back to play on your college football team, and you're not even in the top 15.
And to my memory, the lowest amount of touchdowns he scored in a game was 2.
Yes.
Which is still good.
So your point is absolutely correct. It doesn't matter. This kid could go to Princeton, win a couple Ivy League championships, not win a couple Ivy League championships, be perfect. That's all that matters. I definitely think you're right there. I really think you are. Absolutely. There's nothing more correct that it doesn't matter about the team anymore. There's nothing that matters about the team. It really doesn't. It used to matter about the team. They won a couple bowl games. They won a championship. They won away games. That doesn't matter.
Go out and get that degree. Have a job set up for you after you do your couple-year run in the NFL and make your millions.
Perfect.
So let's round off the top 10. We got at 6 Penn State, 7 Washington, 8 Oklahoma, 9 Wisconsin, and 10 LSU.
Jake Browning's coming back in Washington. I think they're going to be a better team than people think.
You think they're going to be a fly under the radar team?
Yes, they're definitely a fly under the radar team. Absolutely. Washington has a very good team. And meanwhile, they play in the Pac-12.
They're athletic.
They are athletic.
Very athletic team.
All right, I like their defense. I like Jake Browning from the returning people from last year. I like teams that have a lot of returning players.
The only issue I have with Washington is potentially their defense.
Correct.
That defense potentially could have an upside where they play good, but I feel like there's going to be a lot of shootouts for this team. A lot of games are going to be decided with who has the ball last.
Absolutely. I like what their defense has to offer freshman-wise from looking at Washington and doing some research, but at the end of the day, they lost a good amount of starters. But they gained a lot of people on offense. That was my point when they gained people who played last year. Mm-hmm. You got some offensive linemen and a quarterback who started last year. That's going to help.
That will help for sure.
Oklahoma, it's a very odd occurrence because Stoops retired. I really think that has something to do with this. At the end of the day.
It might be... I don't know. Honestly, I think they're a little highly ranked right now, in my opinion.
Well, it depends on your argument. Does a head coach mean more in college football than people think?
I think it for sure does, because there are a lot of different variables that go into being a college head coach versus an NFL head coach.
Right.
You're a college head coach, you are the one responsible for all of the men on your team.
Correct.
Because they are all, most of them can't even drink. Some of them are probably hanging out in bars because they're old enough to. You got to make sure some of those kids don't get into trouble. You got to make sure the kids are academically ready. There are a lot of different things that go into being a head coach, and all that's going to be ran through the head coach too.
You are absolutely right.
So that, with Stoops retiring, yeah, I could see where that's an issue. But I'm sure with a team like Oklahoma, they got somebody else that'll be a good fit for them. It might take a couple of years for them to get back to where they should be, but I think they'll be okay this year.
Absolutely. We'll go to the 11 through 15, Michigan, Oklahoma State, Auburn, Florida, Stanford.
I don't really have a problem with any of those.
Yeah, they
I think
fit
that's
pretty
the
well.
Yeah, I think that's the best fit spot for all those teams, in my opinion, because we don't know what we got with U of M, and I'm a U of M slappy, so that's hard for me to say.
U of M makes a lot of sense to me that
Yes.
people think they're going to be good based on their coach and their defensive coordinator and how they can play defense and win games late. But the quarterback is a big problem. Peters or Spate, you really don't know. Spate didn't have to show up a lot last year.
No.
He didn't.
No.
At the end of the day.
But they lost 16 starters, too.
Right.
You got to fill those gaps as well. That's the biggest issue I have with Michigan this year is, are those gaps going to be filled?
Correct.
It's a young team.
That's a big question. Next, we'll go 16 through 20, Louisville, Miami, Georgia, Kansas State, West Virginia. Miami's up there for some odd reason. I really don't get why.
I don't know.
9-4 last year. Didn't really have a lot of starters coming back. They beat West Virginia in the Russell Athletic Bowl, but 17th overall seems pretty
a little high.
Little high to me.
Little high. Yeah, no, I agree. I think Louisville, honestly, because you said Washington was a fly under the radar team, I think Louisville might, with Lamar Jackson coming back. I think more of the team is going to be used to his play style, and they'll figure out how to play around him.
Absolutely.
I love Lamar Jackson. I think he's sweet.
Now we go to 21 through 25. Finishing up, Virginia Tech, South Florida, Tennessee, Texas, Washington State. This seems like a guess section.
A little bit.
They just guessed it.
Texas at 5-7 sitting there. That's
5-7 last year.
Let's throw MSU in there too. How about that? Does that sound good?
I mean, compared to
essentially, yeah. Like with Texas though, at 5-7 being in the top 25, I don't see that. In my opinion,
right?
But I think Tennessee might be decent this year.
Well, it's the SEC, Cam. You got
it's
Alabama,
a
Florida, LSU,
hard
Arkansas.
conference. Hard conference.
Hard conference.
I think Tennessee is another team that could be decent this year. Do a little better than people think.
Yeah, it's going to be a very interesting year. We talked about fly under the radar teams, but you really don't know until these games get started. But looking at the top 25, I think not a big team is going to surprise me this year at the top. I mean, I think that's college football is eventually going to turn into the NBA in case things happen. The top four might just be the top four at the end.
So who are you thinking is going to be the playoff this year?
Playoff this year? I will go with Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, and Florida State. The top four right now. Yes, Florida State is an excellent team with an excellent coach who plays in the ACC. So if they beat Clemson, they're in. If they lose to Clemson and win all the rest of their games, they're in. So I think 2 ACC teams is going to be at the end there.
All right, and I did read an article on Bleacher Report saying to look out for Wisconsin, that they might be a team that could break that playoff.
Well, I think that's the conference now that people need to really think about is the Big Ten. You have Ohio State, Penn State, Wisconsin, Michigan, Nebraska.
All beating up on each other.
All in the same conference.
That is a tough conference.
Give me your top four before we round out the show.
I'm going to say Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson. But the fourth spot is so difficult for me.
It's tough.
Just based off the article that I read, and it did make a lot of great points, I think Wisconsin is going to – I think they're going to run it out this soon. I think they're going to get that fourth spot.
Well, they played so well last year without even a quarterback.
No, they did
what's
for
funny
sure.
to me.
And my opinion, I think they'll figure it out. I think they'll get that fourth playoff spot.
You know, it could be, but that's 2 Big Ten teams. So, well, look at it this way. If Wisconsin beats Ohio State, do you think they're in?
Yeah.
With 2 losses?
I don't know. It depends how
Okay.
the other teams shake up. If they have 2 losses, if they have one loss and it's to a bigger school,
Yeah.
like if they lose to Nebraska or something like that,
Yeah.
I might give them the nod.
Got it.
Well, that's all the time we got. Thank you, Jimmy. It was a lot of fun, Cam, going talking at you. James A. Paxson with a lot of insight. We'll get back to you guys next week. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, we're walking to school. We're walking to school. Yeah, we're walking to school.